No one wants to be sick. No one says, wouldn't it be great to be sick? And yet it is recognized that our minds play a large part in many diseases. For instance, ulcers or high blood pressure. And now it is becoming equally clear that our minds can play a big part in preventing or curing many diseases. In line with this, scientists have begun to study the claims of people such as yogis, who say that all of the body can be controlled by the mind, and then demonstrate this by doing things like temporarily stopping their hearts without adverse effects. Electronic technology is being applied in new training programs such as biofeedback training, which seem to enable ordinary people to gain voluntary control and reestablish health in all sorts of processes inside their skins. We seem to be at the threshold of a new era in human health, a new understanding of the potentials of the human mind. If we can make ourselves sick, perhaps we can learn to make ourselves well. These Indian dancers translate an ancient Hindu epic into graceful body movements. They consciously bring mind and body into perfect harmony. Most of us, however, are too busy rushing around to be conscious of the interactions of mind and body. We unconsciously bark out internal commands such as run, hurry, and our bodies obey. In addition, we are generally unconscious of the effects of emotional states on our bodies. We often remain unaware of the effects of long-term psychological stress, working like an internal time bomb until it is too late, until we have developed a psychosomatic disorder like tension headaches or erratic heart behavior. Mental and emotional processes continuously affect our bodies, whether we are conscious of it or not. If the conscious and the unconscious work together smoothly, coordinate properly, we can have psychosomatic health. If they don't work together smoothly or get discoordinated in some way, we can have a psychosomatic problem, like a stomach ulcer. As an analogy, after we've learned to drive a car, a lot of our actions are totally automatic. That is, we're not conscious of what we're doing, we just do it. A good driver unconsciously does the right thing. A bad driver unconsciously makes mistakes. In exactly the same way, coordination between conscious and unconscious processes in our mind-body relationship can result in psychosomatic health. If they get discoordinated or antagonistic in some way, we can have a psychosomatic problem. The main point is, the important point, is that psychosomatic health, just like good driving, can be learned. I work here at the Menninger Foundation with my wife Alyce and daughter Judy, and with our longtime colleague Dale Walters. We've been studying mind-body coordination for about 8 years. One of our most interesting projects is the study of unusual people who have demonstrated mind-body coordination through various training programs. One of the unusual people we had a chance to study was Swami Rama from Rishikesh, India. We had heard that he could do some unusual things, and we asked him to perform. He demonstrated blood flow control in his hand, and then one day he said, "Tomorrow I'll stop my heart." We objected to this because of the fact that he had said it was a risky thing to do without fasting, and he hadn't been fasting. But he said, "No, I want to do it. I've never been wired up before. If I do it, now I'll know what I can do." When we still objected, he said, "I'll sign papers that say the Menninger Foundation is not responsible for my death." Well, the way it worked out, he won the argument. We didn't bother about the papers because he agreed to only stop his heart for 10 seconds. When we wired him up and put him in the lab, we found out that his heart was beating at a normal rate, and suddenly it began beating at 5 times the normal rate. And when I asked him about this, and I said, "You know, your heart didn't really stop the way we thought. I thought it was going to draw a straight line." He said, "Well, you know, when you stop your heart this way, it still flutters in there." Later on, we took this record to a cardiologist to find out what was really going on. And he said, "Well, this phenomena is called atrial flutter. And you know, the heart is just fluttering in there." He happened to use the same word that the Swami used. And then the cardiologist said, "The blood pressure has dropped. He has probably fainted. By the way, what happened to this man anyway?" We said, "Well, nothing. We took off his wires and he went up and gave his lecture." Episodes of this kind were certainly interesting from a physiological point of view, and we decided that we would later go to India and see if we could find some other people like Swami Rama. Indians have a long tradition of respect for people who have attained self-mastery. Devotees and disciples gather around teachers whom they feel demonstrate unusual mental or physical powers. We wired up a number of these individuals for physiological testing. The research team consisted of myself, my wife Alyce, and our daughter Judy, who is also affiliated with the Menninger Research Department. In order to study these people scientifically, a portable lab was built by our biomedical people at the foundation. It records heart behavior, respiration, brain waves, skin temperature, and skin voltage. A camera programmed to shoot 1 frame per second photographs the dials. Other electronic data are recorded on magnetic tape cassettes for later computer analysis. We joined Swami Rama at his ashram on the banks of the Ganges and tested out the portable laboratory. And then we began testing other people who had learned unusual control of the body and mind. India is famous for fakirs, people who do things such as sitting on a bed of nails. So we wired up a fakir, a little ash-covered man who literally sits on a bed of nails. A test was run on what happens inside his skin when a bed of nails supports the outside of his skin. Our test also provided entertainment for the local sadhus, holy men. One of our interests is Hatha Yoga, the ancient Indian system for integrating mind and body. Through intense practice of breathing exercises and postures, one is supposed to be able to gain conscious control of many body functions that are normally regulated by the involuntary nervous system. We ran tests on a number of Hatha yoga practitioners, such as this man, Ramesh, an instructor at Benares Hindu University. We monitored changes occurring inside of his body while he performed a series of asanas, or postures. Another yogi demonstrated Nauli, an advanced exercise for the muscles and organs of the abdomen. It was a clear demonstration of how Hatha yoga can bring usually untrained muscles under conscious control. Some yogis can also control visceral processes, as in the case of Sri Ramanand Yogi of Hyderabad, who said he could make his heart skip a beat at will. When we brought our magnetic tapes back from India to find out what had actually happened, we played the magnetic tapes, which were on cassettes, into our paper tape, that is, into our polygraph, in order to get a visual record so we could see what had happened. And when we did that, we could see that Ramanand's heart was beating in a regular way, as it should. Beat, 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 and then it missed a beat, just as he said it would. Now, exactly what he did is a little bit hard to say, but we can see from the record that a beat is missing, that he has done something. Now, it's also interesting to note that all of the people who can do mind-body self-regulation aren't in India. There are also some Westerners who can do this sort of thing. And recently, we've had a chance to work with a man by the name of Jack Schwartz, who has demonstrated pain control and bleeding control. How do you go about a pain control problem from the inside? What do you do?
Well, there's a process of being non-attached.
Are you saying you look at yourself in an objective way?
Oh yeah, totally objective, and in no circumstances subjective, because it's the subjectivity what makes, and the indoctrination we have gone through, that what is in our subconscious mind, what tells us that we should feel pain and we should bleed and we should get infection, which interfere with the process.
You know, you said an interesting thing. You said fear, and then you said unconscious.
Right.
And what it sounds like is what you're saying is that you have to get conscious control of the unconscious. Jack discovered his ability to consciously control normally unconscious, involuntary processes when he was a boy in Holland. He has demonstrated all sorts of unpleasant things to doctors to show that the mind can control pain and bleeding. After Jack had been wired up, Judy assists Dale Walters in the control room in monitoring Jack's brainwaves, heart rate, and other physiological indicators, while Jack demonstrates pain and bleeding control. They use a closed-circuit TV to correlate Jack's movements with the polygraph records.
The calibrations are set and we're ready to go now.
Okay, well, we're ready to go. How about letting me see that needle, Jack? This is your weapon.
Right.
It looks like a regular steel needle. What is it exactly?
Well, it is a so-called sailmaker's needle. It is about 4.5 to 5 inches long. And as you see, it is not any special preparation on it. It's even rusty.
Yeah, it looks a little rusty.
And of course, you are putting nicely your germs on it now too. So before I'm going to pierce this through the arm, let us sterilize it first with my germs too, so we get a kind of nice intermixing of germs and bacteria. And we cannot do it with, normally we do this on the floor with my foot to show that the body will not take any infection, that it will throw the different foreign bodies which shouldn't go into the body are thrown off. So any time that you feel that I should put this needle through now, of course I'm going to pierce the needle really through, from this point through this point, and I'm not going to look if there are any specific arteries involved or veins or capillaries involved. So I will just keep talking to you, and if you can support my arm a little bit, then we can put it right in there.
Oh,
right.
All right, okay.
So,
okay.
So now it is through, and we can leave it in there for a couple of seconds. Well,
it looks like it's buried about half an inch deep in your biceps.
Yes, it is really. And as you see, an interesting thing again occurred. It comes right out of a vein here, which is kind of pronounced vein.
Coming out of a small
and
vein.
Here, again, by accident, I put it in a vein here too. It is as if it's.
I noticed something
right.
interesting as you're doing that. I could feel all sorts of tissue things happening inside as you were pushing it.
Yeah. Well, here again, it is not as if I'm putting a needle through my arm, but I'm putting a needle through a arm, which just happened to be part of a body which I temporarily possess in order to function through. And then again, the mind, in a non-attached, subjective way, is looking from a distance at it and monitoring the whole process.
Well, when you pull this needle out, do you want me to hold it again, or do you?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Now it is out. Now what you could do, if you would grab the arm and kind of wring so that you don't cover the holes, so that the holes are still visible, wring it like a dish rag, and put pressure upon it with tremendous power. You can use all your physical power
I
for
could
that.
try to force some blood out of it.
Right.
I
Now,
noticed
of
that by
course,
forcing it up, I could force one little drop of blood
one
out.
little drop, which we now, of course, just wipe off, and it stops. It stops immediately, and the hole will start closing. As you see, this hole already is closed.
This one is closed. The bigger one here
the bigger
is
one is because we had to really wriggle our way in there to make the first contact. But if you can observe it, it is now getting smaller already, and it is closing.
When we get the records, our physiological records, I'd like to show you what they are, and we can talk about what they might mean. It seems to me from the brainwave record and the heart rate record that you didn't show any significant reaction to pain. The question which comes up, however, is a question which I'm asked lots of times when I'm giving lectures. What good is it going to do me to learn how to stop my heart or poke needles through my arm?
Well, it is very logical that this question should come up. And I personally am not out to demonstrate putting needles through my arms to teach people that specific thing. But what can be taught to people is that they can self-regulate their mind-body coordination so that their physiological processes will be in such a state that they can prevent any disease.
But how can the average person learn to use his mind to control a psychosomatic disorder? The way Jack controls pain and bleeding? Well, the same way we learn every skill, through feedback. Suppose you're interested in basketball. Let's say you want to improve shooting. You take a practice shot, you see the ball bounce off the rim or backboard, then you use this visual feedback of information to coordinate your muscles for a better shot. If a youngster wants to improve his shooting, your comments can also help. This is another kind of feedback. But with appropriate information from the body, we can learn many skills that were thought to be beyond voluntary control for the average person. Suppose you want to learn to wiggle your ears. A mirror will give you information which you can use to learn this new skill. In a more serious vein, mind-body theory says that if we can design instruments to mirror events inside our skins, we should be able to learn control of seemingly inaccessible internal processes. To study this is the goal of our research in biofeedback. Biofeedback is the feedback of biological information to a person. Through biofeedback, a person can learn something about what is going on inside of his skin. For instance, I'm wired up right now to a heart rate machine. I'm measuring the voltage between my right ear and my left wrist. And this voltage is being displayed on the paper tape. Now, for instance, the channel on the left shows my heart rate, my heartbeat, as a direct electrical signal. The channel on the right shows my heart rate. When I learn how to speed up my heart through looking at this paper tape and seeing what is going on inside, then I am making use of biofeedback training. If I speed my heart up right now, for instance, and then let it slow down, like that. That kind of training isn't necessarily valuable for somebody whose heart is okay. But if a person had a heart problem, it could be very important. Biofeedback training can be used for many psychosomatic disorders. Believe it or not, by listening to this howling machine, you can learn to relax.
Okay, Dwayne, why don't you clench your teeth and we'll see what happens here.
Okay.
Okay, now you see when there's greater tension, of course, the tone increases and the needle also swings to the right.
Yes, I see.
Okay, now why don't we try this? Frown or wrinkle your forehead and let's see what happens. Okay, again you see the needle went up, indicating greater tension, and then it went back down, indicating less tension.
Yes, I see.
Dale Walters is training a subject to use a biofeedback machine that measures and feeds back information about muscle tension. Patients trained to decrease muscle tension have relieved mind-body problems such as insomnia and tension headaches. Learning to increase tension has sometimes helped with paralysis.
Visualize what you want to have happen, and then just let it happen, okay?
Okay.
This muscle tension machine is but one of many biofeedback instruments, however. The thermometer, a familiar instrument, has been adapted into a useful biofeedback device important in the research of Dale Walters, myself, and my wife, Alyce.
With the use of this simple biofeedback instrument, the temperature trainer, one can learn to voluntarily control the temperature in particular areas of his body. This means voluntarily controlling the blood flow to that area. Okay, Regina, you were successful. You raised your hand temperature several degrees. How did you do it?
I visualized the warm sun on my arm and my hand and imagined the warmth of the sun flowing on my hand and causing my temperature to raise.
Biofeedback training in temperature control has been found helpful in the treatment of various psychosomatic illnesses, mind-body illnesses, such as Raynaud's disease, which is a blood flow problem in the hands, and migraine headache, which is a blood flow problem in the head.
Margaret Donnelly worked with a temperature trainer in the migraine research project of our colleague, Dr. Joseph Sargent, an internist at the Menninger Foundation.
Margaret, how did you happen to get into the migraine headache research project?
I'd been having headaches since I was a small child, and there's a history of migraines in my family. My mother has severe ones, and two of my younger sisters have headaches. So my headaches increased in severity as I reached my early 20s, to the point where they were becoming very difficult for me to continue with my daily program of work and school. So no neurologist could determine that was physical cause, so he suggested that I enter Dr. Sargent's program. It has decreased the headaches considerably to the point where I don't really need medication. And I can do this when I'm at work or at a party. Just think about warmth blowing into my hands and it stops the headache before it starts.
So you mean sometimes you can abort the headache just in a few seconds?
That's right.
The question now is, what is it that Swami Rama, Jack Schwartz, and a housewife learning to control migraine have in common? What are they doing that brings them to a common ground? It seems that the answer may be in learning to control consciousness, in learning to regulate the mind and the body through visualization, telling the body what to do through visualization. The common ground seems to be a state of consciousness. For centuries, Indian yogis have learned to control states of consciousness through meditation. So we wired up some meditators, such as this man whose meditation was guided by the touch of his guru, Mahayogini Rajalakshmi, who herself appeared to be in deep trance. We recorded brainwaves, heart rate, respiration, and so forth, to see if his meditation affected those processes. In meditation studies, we are particularly interested in the brain rhythm as a physiological indicator of states of consciousness. We ran other studies at the holy city of Varanasi on the Ganges, a traditional center of yoga and meditation. Again, our major interest was the brainwave record, because specific brainwave patterns often indicate the presence of certain psychological conditions. For example, when people are active or have their attention focused on the outside world, they usually produce beta brainwave rhythm in the visual area, called the occiput, at the back of the head. Beta occurs between 13 and 25 cycles per second and is seldom associated with meditation. When attention is withdrawn from the surroundings, however, when one gets into a tranquil state associated with relaxation, alpha rhythm often appears in the occiput. Alpha, between 8 and 13 cycles per second, is often found in the brainwave records of meditators. If consciousness is further withdrawn, if one becomes drowsy or is in a state of deep reverie, theta waves are often found at the occiput, a 4 to 8 cycle per second pattern. Theta is sometimes associated with deep meditation and with imagery coming to the surface from the unconscious. Swami Nada Brahmananda demonstrated that one can control complex body activities while meditating, producing both alpha and theta rhythms. He played a complex raga, a musical, never blinking his eyes once. His eyes and his attention were fixed on an image of his patron deity, Shiva. And then there was Yogi Raj. In an experiment conducted in cooperation with Professor Ramakrishna Rao of Andhra University, Yogi Raj, after preliminary tests, was sealed in an airtight box for 7.5 hours. Normal breathing and normal metabolism could be expected to quickly use up the limited oxygen supply, and he would pass out. We felt, therefore, that he would at least have to control his emotional state in order to lower the metabolic rate of his body. We were particularly interested in his brainwave record as a clue to his meditative condition during the experiment. When we got back to the United States, Judy ran his records through the polygraph.
What we're interested in is the state of consciousness that enables this yogi to stay in the box in a reduced oxygen environment for 7 hours. We're looking at the brainwave rhythm of the yogi in the box. He's now been in the box for 7 hours. This is very clear alpha. It's a fairly high amplitude and it's a slow frequency. He has produced this alpha wave nearly continuously for the 7 hours that he's been in the box, in a situation which most of us would probably be panic-stricken. Now this indicates that he's in a very quiet, relaxed mental and emotional state, and he's also in a quiet physiological state. Jack Schwartz, at the moment that he pushed the needle through his arm and demonstrated control of pain, also produced the alpha frequency. But in terms of states of consciousness research, rather than physiological research, the more interesting brainwave rhythm is theta.
This research subject, a college student, is using feedback tones from a brainwave trainer to learn to increase his percentage of theta waves. In the state of consciousness associated with theta, unconscious imagery may spring to the surface, imagery which can prove useful in solving personal problems. This research finding led us to consider the possibility of using brainwave training for aiding mental patients. In addition to this, however, biofeedback training has many other potential uses. Lying through all of the biofeedback training is an increase in self-awareness. And self-awareness lies at the core of handling interpersonal problems. People who find themselves in this Kansas penitentiary often have long histories of interpersonal problems due to lack of self-mastery and self-awareness. An innovative biofeedback program using the simple temperature trainer is giving some of the inmates practical experience in self-mastery. It is being conducted by my daughter, Pat Norris, a clinical psychologist. We have found that education can use biofeedback.
Boys and girls, we're going to see how our minds affect our bodies.
A temperature training program has been studied at an elementary school in Junction City, Kansas.
This machine is used for checking temperature of your hand.
These sessions provide the students with important first-hand experience in learning self-control. This pilot research was initiated by an elementary school counselor, Donna Cater.
How did we say this person feels?
Happy!
The school counselor uses audiovisual aids, along with biofeedback, to help the students become conscious of how their minds affect their bodies.
Erase that. Show me how you look when you feel okay. Which way does your head go when you feel okay?
When people are feeling depressed, they start to droop their body and hang their head, and being in that stance is like a cue for more depression.
Before the training session begins, Pat talks with the prisoners about the role of mind-body coordination in relating to other people.
To some extent, you create your own reality with other people. If you're angry all the time, and you really, are sharp and short with people, then they're going to behave differently with you because they start to feel differently when they're in your presence. And the same with open or friendly or buoyant. Eventually, people start to respond to you in that way, and you have a different experience of it. We all experience each other differently, partly for that reason, too. Okay. You want to go ahead and hook up now, and we can start our session.
Now, boys and girls, remember the biofeedback machine that we used? What did we do with it?
Your fingers getting hot.
It shows your fingers getting hot?
Your hand.
How did you feel when your finger got hot?
It was cold. It was cold, and then I wondered if I could get warm.
And could you?
Yes.
What
and
happened
then,
inside you when it got warm? How did you feel?
I feel like somebody had a bucket of milk and threw it right on my head.
My whole body feels quiet, comfortable, and relaxed.
Through the use of autogenic phrases for self-programming, Pat helps her trainees achieve a tranquil state, while at the same time they are wired to the temperature trainers.
Deep within my mind, I can visualize and experience myself as relaxed, comfortable, and still.
Now feel real quiet and think about your hands getting warmer.
Donna uses similar autogenic phrases to help her students learn conscious relaxation.
And your hands getting warmer. Your hand's getting hot right here. Think about it getting hot. Think about how that feels.
I felt real warm.
Was that a good feeling?
Sure.
Why was it a good feeling?
Because I always get warm.
Many of the inmates have learned something from biofeedback training that helps them cope with immediate problems in the prison environment.
I had a toothache the other day, to just give an example. And I just kind of concentrated on the area of the gums that did hurt, and said to myself that it didn't hurt, that I relaxed the muscles in it, that it felt heavy, the blood was just flowing through it. And actually where the pain was actually coming from, I said to myself that that was no longer pain and that it was now feeling good. And consequently, I was rather surprised to see that the pain did actually go away without any drugs or anything.
Gee, that's terrific.
I think as far as what I've seen useful from outside the sessions is the fact that living in a world of sensory bombardment, music at 6 a.m. until 10:30 at night sometimes, it gives me the opportunity to relax and form a sense of concentration in which I can remove myself from all of that. As far as here goes, in the sessions themselves, I find being able to watch the needle move on the machines, it's kind of a physical way in which to see that I really can control some of the things that go on in my life, inwardly.
Yeah, that's neat. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, it is a good feeling.
Feel kind of on top.
Right.
With the aid of a simple temperature trainer, young men turn within and begin to learn mastery over the course of their lives. The same device gives school children insights into their own mind-body interactions, a kind of psychosomatic preventive medicine. Other biofeedback training can enhance mental and emotional health. In studying unusual people from around the world, it has become increasingly clear that we can increase our control of what happens inside of us. We can learn how to maintain mental and physical health, which we would like to think is our natural state.
If there is such a thing as psychosomatic disease, then obviously there must be such a thing as psychosomatic health.
The point in all this is that we must not underestimate our power to change our lives. It depends mainly on whether we want to and whether we have the courage to try.